Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games. In this episode, we talk about board games that gave us unique experiences.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast. When we were kids, the term board game evoked a very particular image. They came in the same cookie-cutter formula. They had a board, dice, and pawns. You rolled and moved around the board, and most of them came in the same sized box.
Today, board games can mean so much more. A card game, a dice game, a tabletop role-playing game are all often referred to as board games. They don't even need to have a board and can combine these and many other elements.
For a board game to provide a unique experience, you might suggest that it should play in a unique way, provide an immersive experience, and memorable stories that feel different and last long after the game is over.
The people that you play with will also influence how you feel about the game.
Because board games can combine so many different elements, they now have the potential to give you an experience you've never had before.
In this episode, we discuss several board games that have provided us with a unique experience that has been remembered long after we've left the table.
Join us as we share some of our favorite, unique board game experiences. I'll never forget what brought me into this hobby, and that was Will Wheaton's Tabletop.
Interesting.
That YouTube channel.
Yeah. It was a good show.
About 3 episodes in, he presented The Resistance, which was my first introduction into social deduction games. Like, where the whole point of the game is to find out who your teammates were and who you could trust and who you couldn't.
Yeah.
And the only mechanism really is lying.
He's lying, yes. That's very true, right?
And I'll never forget that, like, discovering that was there and saying, wait. Board games do that now?
Yeah, exactly. What else is a social deduction game?
The big one was Resistance, and then they rethemed it to Avalon.
Oh, right, Avalon, right.
Well, Werewolf was the first one, the very first one.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah, Werewolf is the first social deduction game where there's players around the table that are the werewolves,
right,
or Mafia, as it was originally.
Right.
And you had to figure out who they were and eliminate them before they eliminated you. And since then, there's been all sorts of reiterations of it, but I distinctly remember experiencing a board game that had lying as a mechanism when it first came out. And I was just enthralled. And then later on, you find the bluffing games like Coup or Cockroach Poker.
Right.
And that was incredibly unique to me as well, in that you could get like a game of poker, like distilled down to just the bluffing.
Yeah.
Right? You'd get rid of all the math and just do that.
Yeah. For me, I don't remember exactly what was my first game, probably Werewolf. That was probably my first sort of social deduction, and lying was part of a game.
Yeah.
And that was more like a parlor game. I didn't associate it with being a board game. I just kind of thought of it as, somebody told somebody how to play this and let's do it kind of thing.
It was like a folk game, because when I introduced it to the family, my kids turned to me and said, "Oh, this is just Mafia. We play this at daycare."
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
They played Mafia at daycare. I would have a problem.
Yeah.
We'd be sending letters to that daycare. It just doesn't sound right. My 5-year-old is talking about a mob hit.
They were probably 9, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. The game Sheriff of Nottingham, to me, is the ultimate example of this.
It's a really good example of that.
It's lying to your friends, lying to your family, lying to everyone about everything.
With permission.
Yeah, with permission.
It's expected.
Mm-hmm. And, you can certainly play the game without lying, but it's way more fun to slip in the odd lie.
And when my kids discovered that, wait a minute, this is cool if I don't tell you the truth right now, it's all right if right? It's all part of the magic circle, right?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the term, the magic circle?
I am, but do you want to give us a real quick definition of what that is?
It was originally coined by Johan Huizinga, the Dutch historian, in the early 1900s. But then it was revived in modern vernacular by Edward Castronova in Synthetic Worlds, The Business of Culture and Online Games. And it talks about how when we sit down at the table and to play this game, we all agree to adhere to these rules.
Right. A common set of rules.
Common set of rules, exactly. We're not going to cheat. We're all going to play by the rules that have been established ahead of time. But maybe the set of rules might have lying or deception in there. And now it's okay. And now you've got your school-aged kid turning to mom and totally fibbing and getting away with it. And these kinds of things are not activities the kid would normally engage in.
Yeah, exactly.
All from the magic circle. 2 Rooms and a Boom. 2 Rooms and a Boom is a team-based, real-time social deduction party game for 6 to 30 players, ages 8 and up. 2 Rooms and a Boom plays in about 20 minutes and was designed by Alan Girding and Sean McCoy and was published by Tuesday Night Games in 2013. In 2 Rooms and a Boom, you're either trying to help the president or you're hunting him down in this social deduction game that can accommodate up to 30 players.
Whew! 30 players! That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played a game with 30 players. Have you ever played it with 30 players, Matt?
Yes.
Wow.
And that is why we are leading this episode off with this game.
Nice.
At first, you won't know who your allies are, and you won't even know who the president is, but your objectives are clear. If the bomber and the president are in the same room at the end of the 5th round, the president is killed and the red team wins. It's the blue team's job to protect the president. During setup, the moderator creates a deck of cards that contain an even number of rolls for both the red and blue teams. The cards are then shuffled and dealt out, one to each player, while players are also being separated equally into 2 rooms. So right off the bat, we're not playing this game at a table.
Right. You need a bigger space. You need to have a space to accommodate lots of people.
You got to walk around.
Yeah. And you need 2 different rooms because
you can't have any communication between them.
They have to be able to talk in private in each room.
There's another reason why this game is on the list is because all the stars have to be perfectly aligned in order for you to play.
Right.
Like, you need 2 rooms, you need 30 people. Yeah, forget it.
You don't play this at a board game cafe with a couple of friends.
Exactly. Players are either assigned the red team or the blue team. There are some gray team roles for when there's an odd player count or very large player count. One of the red team members will be the bomber, and one of the blue team members will be the president. One person from each room is randomly assigned to be the room leader. The room leader will choose a player to go to the other room, a hostage exchange, at the end of each timed round. A typical game of 2 Rooms and a Boom is 5 rounds long. There are 3 things a player can do during the game. They can call for a change in leadership. At any time, any player can point to any player, including themselves, and ask for them to be the new room leader. If a majority of the room agrees, the new leader is chosen, otherwise nothing happens.
Okay.
Any player can ask to color share with any other player. Those 2 players walk into the corner of the room and secretly show each other just the corner of their card, revealing the team that they're on, but not their role. Any player can also ask to full card share, same as the color share, except both players agree to show their entire card to each other. At a small player count, say 8 to 15 players, you can play a 3-round game. Otherwise, it's a 5-round game. The first round is 5 minutes, the second round 4 minutes, then 3 minutes, 2 minutes. The last round is 1 minute long.
So it plays pretty fast.
20 minutes, yeah. If you include the hostage exchange is a couple of minutes. So I've added 5 minutes for that. So yeah, you can get a game out in 20 minutes.
So players can ask to color share or do a full card share what is the other player's obligation? Do they have to say yes?
It's a mutual agreement. You walk up to another player and you go, do you want a color share? Do you want a color share?
Right. Okay.
And that person be like, no, I'm not ready to do that right now. And they've got their card, pressed against their chest, and they're kind of reading the room, because this is happening simultaneously all around the room.
Cool.
You can see other people like, oh, you want a color share? You want a card share? And then you can see them kind of pair up. And then once they've shared and they don't walk away from each other, they're on the same team, right?
Right.
You slowly deduce who's on your team and who isn't, right? Just by that. And then, you do a little card. And if you find an ally, if you hope we're on the same team, you do a color share. We're both blue. Great. Now we'll do a full card share. Oh, I'm the president and you're my blue team member. To protect me.
Right.
Great. We're on the same team. Let's, and then maybe they color shared with somebody else earlier. I didn't color share with them, but they did. They can say to me, oh, that person's that. Don't talk to them or whatever, right? And it just kind of evolves naturally this way. It's really kind of interesting.
So when people are broken up into two different rooms, they're not broken up by the color that they are. They're just divided equally. So
yeah, it's completely random.
Yeah, so we've got a mix of blue team and red team in the same room.
Yeah.
And they don't know who to trust. And
yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Mathematically, what's going to happen is one room is going to be led by a blue team member and one room is going to be led by a red team member, because once you realize the leader of the room isn't on your team, you'll want to vote for a new leader, right? You're like, oh, they're blue, I'm red, I'm going to vote for a new leader. You just point to your red buddy and go, I vote that person be new leader. And if you win, then there's, right? If you're going to get majority. And if there is a majority of red in one room, then there has to be a majority of blue in the other room. It's not going to be evenly split.
Right.
So there's always like this, red room dominant, blue room dominant thing going on.
Right. Interesting.
And after a few rounds of this, when everybody's figured out how to play, ultimately the game kind of does boil down to a very complicated game of rock, paper, scissors. Because ultimately at the last round, if everything has gone well, where the president is, they know where the bomber is, and it's, do I send the bomber into that room where the president is, blowing them up?
Okay.
Or are they going to send the president to me and I have to keep my bomber here?
Right.
Right? And it's like that whole bluff, double bluff. If I throw rock, they'll throw scissors.
Yeah.
But thankfully that there's other roles that you can put in.
There's a bomber and a president, but I'm assuming everyone has a role?
The first game you play, you're probably going to play with just red and blue, just the plain members, but the box is filled, just teeming with different roles that you can play.
Wow.
My favorite would be the spy, maybe.
Okay.
Where the red spy, their card is blue. And so when they color share, they look like they're on the blue team.
That's awesome.
But when they full card share, you can see, oh no, they're actually on the red team. But if I just color share, I'm on the blue team. And so that spy can go around.
That's awesome.
And get some information before being found out. And then, of course, it's a good argument to not full card share, because I could be the president and I need to stay secret. So I'm not going to full card share, right? That's my argument, but I could also be the spy. You don't know. It depends on who has the spy. Depends on your group.
Yeah.
There's also two cards that you put in the deck evenly. A red card called the engineer and a blue card called the doctor. The doctor and the president need to do a full card share with each other. Otherwise, the president will die and the red team wins.
Okay.
And the engineer has to do a full card share with the bomber. Otherwise, the bomb's not going to go off and the blue team wins. And so now you're incentivizing the president and the bomber to do full card shares with the people. You put those cards in the deck along with the spy cards, and it really makes the game quite interesting.
So those two are walking around the room going, do you want a full card share? Well, I'm a really important person. Are you really important? Is that kind of what we're looking at? That sort of thing? Like you're giving little hints because you don't want to just full card share with everybody.
You can't. You get an ally maybe early on. You find somebody on your team.
Right.
You figure it out, right? Because you realize, okay, if I'm blue and those people aren't and they're kibitzing on in the corner, well, they must be on the other team. But then eventually you'll figure out somebody that's on your team. You maybe share with them and then have them do all the legwork for you.
Cool.
Well, Matt can't show anybody his card because he's the president, but we need to find the doctor. Do you know where the doctor is? and this kind of thing.
So you're adding in these rules after you've sort of played it once or twice with the same group. Is that it? Or is it always with these different rules?
Depending on the group, I would normally just start with the basic rules.
Right.
No spy, no engineer, no doctor, just the bomber, president, and go.
Right.
Because the game's so quick, it's 20 minutes, you'll definitely get people that'll be like, yeah, let's do that again. Let's make it more interesting.
Right.
And then other people will be like, you know what? I've had my fun. That's done.
Cool.
And they'll walk away. You know, some people are like, I'll play this all night.
Right. What are the other rules?
Literally, the box is filled. There's green cards that are good to play with lower player counts, things like the leprechaun or tentacles or whatever. It really kind of complicates the game. The gray cards are good because they're not on any team at all. And so if you do have an odd player count, you can throw one of those in and they're just on their own team. Or if, like I said, you've got like a big player count, having a few gray cards can make it a little more interesting.
Cool.
The gambler, for example, at the end of the game, the gambler has to guess who's going to win. If the gambler's right, the gambler wins as well.
Okay.
The Romeo and Juliet, they both need to be together and with the bomber in order to win.
Aw, they're in love and they're going to die. Oh, that's terrible. But it's nice too.
There's the intern and things like that. And they all have their own little mini games involved. The mime. There's a red mime and a blue mime. They're not allowed to speak. The entire game, they're not allowed to speak.
Oh my God, that sounds like fun.
Where they can nod their heads and they shake their heads, but they can't ask any questions or whatever, right?
That's hilarious.
So it's fun if you have the mime in the game, then anybody can pretend to be the mime.
Right.
You don't have to have the mime card to pretend to be the mime. So that's fun.
Right.
And the shy guy, for example, he won't show his card to anybody. Can't do full card share, right? He doesn't share, just refuses to share. And again, if the card's in the game, you can just pretend you have that card, even if you don't have that card.
Right.
Now you have a reason to behave that way.
Yeah. I've obviously never played this game. I have to play this game. It sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's fun. It takes the right group and it takes a big group.
Yeah.
Which is a tall order. It's hard to do.
Yeah. The reason I haven't played it with you is because I don't go to the Mackenzie family camping outings where we get to do these fun things.
That's right. So my family and I would go to family camp every August, the end of the summer, week 9, this YMCA residential kids camp would turn to a family camp. So out of the 9 weeks of the year, 8 of them was 7 to 14-year-old boys and girls staying in these cabins and having 3 square meals a day and campfires and all that. Week 9, the last week of August, families would get to stay in those cabins.
Cool.
And it was exactly the same. We had 3 square meals a day and snack at night and canoeing and kayaking and all that stuff, right? All that camp stuff. But we did everything as a family. It's a great activity when you've got little toddlers and like preschool kids that are just too young to do much of anything. But there's lifeguards at every corner and there's safe people and it's just a wonderful environment. It's amazing.
Cool.
It was the summer vacation.
Every year, this is something that you and your kids...
Yeah, we did it for 10 years.
Nice.
And it was, And of course, every year I would bring board games as a rain deterrent. If it ever rained, I would bring them into the mess hall and we would all play board games. But of course, the number of board games I brought was equally correlated to the number of sunny days we would have.
Right. Yes, you never got to play them.
Yeah. But when 2 Rooms and a Boom came out, I brought that and I got a small group of our friends and another family. So maybe like 12 people involved in playing. And we just did it in our cabin and it was a huge hit. Everybody really liked it. And we started to incorporate some of the more complex roles and everything. And it was like a really big hit. And then I suggested we take our 14 people and we go to the mess hall. We go to the dining hall and we try to play it there. There's more room, there's more space, but more importantly, we can recruit more people.
Right.
So it was after snack, around 8:30 every night, they would prepare a snack for families and when they would all go back to the mess hall at night after their campfires and they would all grab like some yogurt cups and fruit salad and stuff like that. And I stood up on the podium and I grabbed the microphone there and I turned that on and I announced to everybody that we were going to play this game. Family camp is a magical place because it's that kind of place where you can suggest this ridiculous group activity and 90% of the people will be like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Wow.
Let's see what that's all about, right? So we had a lot of people immediately adapt to play the game.
So how does the rules explanation work with a group that big? Some of them, I imagine, aren't very familiar with different kinds of board games and probably haven't played a game like this before. Is it one that you have to know the rules well, otherwise it can ruin the game?
There's a lot of social deduction games and regular deduction games that can be broken easily if the players don't know what's going on.
Okay. Yeah.
This isn't one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is very forgiving. If you're not playing your role right, people can help you around you. And again, there's those 3 things you need to know. You need to know how a leader in your room is selected.
Right.
And you need to know color share and full card share. That's it.
And that's it.
And people can teach you that while you're playing the game.
Cool.
You don't even need to know those things. You can be handed a card and put it in a room and you don't even to know. Fortunately, because of the magic of family camp, these people were used to being quiet while being told a long list of instructions, and they were used to being, learning new activities and that sort of thing. So it was really the perfect environment for this to take hold. And we played it that night from like 8 until 11. We played a ton of these games. And of course, after a few rounds, people would peel off, and it's, you have to do a head count. After every round, you have to go, okay, that was a 20-player round. People would hand their cards back. You go, okay,
right.
I got 3 cards back. Now it's a 17-player round, and I got to adjust for the gray.
Right.
I got to make sure the teams are even, and make sure the spies are all the same, and all that stuff. But once that was taken care of, setting it up for another round was very, very easy.
That sounds like a blast.
On the 3rd night, we had people waiting for us after snack and asking if we were going to play the game. And when I got up to the microphone, I said, "Hello, everybody. Who wants to play 2 Rooms and a Boom?" And the crowd went insane.
That's awesome.
It was so stupid.
You were the board game rock star for the night.
It was crazy. The next morning, people are asking me on my way to the beach if we're going to play that game again tonight. What's the plan for that game? We're going to incorporate the rules and stuff. And it got quite the following. Kids would drag their parents reluctantly up to the podium. Go on over here. Get over here. And the parents are like, "What are we doing exactly?" And they're like, "Yeah, here's your card. You go in that room. She's going in this room, right?" And I've split them up. The 8-year-old's going over room A and mom's going in room B.
Right.
They're not going to see each other for the next 20 minutes. Right? You just throw them into it. But yeah, it was so much fun.
That's awesome. I got to play that. Maybe at the first Escape into Board Games con.
We'll crack that open.
Make that happen. A 30-player.
That's a good idea.
Improvisation in a game. It's not something that makes me go, "Ooh, let's play that," personally.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people get excited about the idea of improv in a game.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those. I think I'm a little too reserved or shy for that.
Sure.
But I do enjoy it in the right setting with the right group and the right game.
My kids will put improv into games that don't require improv.
Like what?
A game of Werewolf will always start off with everybody introducing them with who they are. "Oh, I'm the baker down by the, come by and get my new cupcakes that I made." I'm like, what? Where does this? And of course, this is part of the official rules of Werewolf. It's in the rule book.
Yeah.
But it's the aspect that my family just sinks their teeth into, if you pardon the pun. We were playing a game one time, and everybody started launching into this stuff. And a friend of mine who was playing with me, she grabbed her card, and I'm like, "What? Where's this? Where did this come from? I just have Villager on my card. Wasn't aware that we were supposed to come up with."
Where's my backstory?
I'm like, "Yeah, that's just something my kids do. Don't worry about that." Or Pick a Pig.
Right.
It's always like a story about how he evolved from, then he took his hat off and then he ate some popcorn. It's always like a little story.
Yeah, that's right.
The different iterations of.
I've played that with your daughter, and she does that and got us doing it too, actually. And then he lost his arm. Poor little pig. So the next game I'm going to talk about has improv as its sort of general mechanism. It's a storytelling game.
Yeah. Which is terribly intimidating when it was pitched to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to need a couple of beers before we start this game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like another game that we've talked about, Cartooner, where you're going to draw a comic strip and a comic book, and you're going to tell this story, and everyone goes, "Oh my God, why did I sit down at this table?"
This sounds too much like homework.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Someone Has Died. Someone Has Died is an improvisational storytelling and role-playing game that was designed by Ellie Black, Liz Roche, and Addie Slapek. It can be played with 3 to 6 players in about 45 minutes and is recommended for ages 13 and up, and was published by Gather Round Games and Chronicle Books in 2016. Someone Has Died is set in a will arbitration meeting where players are trying to convince an estate keeper that they are the person most worthy of inheriting someone's fortune. Identity, relationship, and backstory cards help players create wacky characters who must argue against one another for the riches and glory. The rules for Someone Has Died are designed to be flexible and fun. It's an improv game where players are encouraged to take their stories and characters in new and creative directions. One player is chosen to be the estate keeper. This person acts as a sort of game master for the game and facilitates the game experience. The estate keeper will start with a short intro, improvising the name of the person who died, how they died, and what is included in their inheritance. All of this comes from that player's mind, but they can draw an identity card from the deck to help inspire this part of the story. Everyone gets a hand of 3 different kinds of cards. Identity cards explain who you are during the game and what role you'll be playing. Examples can include:
You are an Area 51 scientist.
You are a caveman thawed from ice.
You are a robot with feelings.
You are a talking dog. Relationship to the deceased cards explain how you knew the deceased person.
You killed their iguana.
You were their parole officer.
You were in a barbershop quartet with them.
And backstory cards might be character quirks or items in your possession, even life events that need to be incorporated into the development of your character and story somehow.
You are cosplaying as your favorite superhero.
You brought a pet falcon to the will arbitration.
You're convinced that the deceased is still alive.
In round 1, players take turns playing all the cards from their hand one at a time, revealing their identity, their relationship to the deceased, and a bit about their backstory. And they have to make their case as to why they should receive the fortune left behind by the deceased.
I love this part, where you kind of just piece it all together, right?
Yeah.
In my first round of this, my relationship to the deceased was that I had hypnotized them. And one of my quirks was that I used air quotes a lot. And so I'm like, well, I didn't really hypnotize him so much as it's more of a self-guided meditation, right? I'm just like air quotes all over the place.
Yeah, this is fun. Like, just sort of figuring out how to make these silly, unconnected things work into the story.
But it's not that hard either, too, right? Because you only have a few.
Yeah. You cannot hide or lie about the cards that you have, but you can use them however you want to creatively improvise a story about who your character is and why they're most deserving. The cards are there as a guideline for creating your story. In round 2, the estate keeper provides a new backstory card and asks one direct question to each player. The new backstory card must be incorporated into the player's answer and should link back to your character and why they should receive the inheritance.
Sometimes this is easier for some players than it is for others, right? Depending on...
Yeah.
And that new card, if it shoehorns everything in there, it could be quite difficult to make it work, but...
And this part requires some pretty quick thinking. Like, you have to kind of go, okay, so now I have to talk about the falcon that's on my shoulder that I didn't mention before or something like that.
Exactly. I find that's the one thing you need in this game is you need to be very witty in order to adapt.
One of the most fun parts of this is the estate keeper can provide players with an objection card as a bonus.
Yeah.
Usually the estate keeper uses this as kind of a reward.
Yeah.
So if you've told a particularly creative, funny, or interesting story, weaving the themes of all the different cards into your story, the estate keeper can just kind of slide you over one of these objection cards. And an objection card is used to interrupt other players in the middle of their story and force them to answer to that bit of the story that's on that card.
That's right. It's not a card that player has to incorporate into their own story.
No.
They get to look at it first and then go, oh, okay,
Yes.
I want to give this to Chris.
Exactly.
Chris is going to get this now, and he has to incorporate it into his story. Oh my gosh.
So while I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate the idea of the falcon on my shoulder
Yeah.
and how no one saw it before, but I just wanted to introduce my falcon. And you may have noticed he's been sitting here on my shoulder the whole time. You slide this card across that says, I've murdered the deceased. And all of a sudden I have to say,
Yeah.
I have to come up with a way to put that into the story. Maybe the falcon was involved in it. Maybe the falcon attacked him and, it wasn't my fault.
It was more of an assisted suicide. It wasn't murder.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't my fault. I know a lot of people are saying that I killed the deceased, but I didn't. It was the falcon. And that's the kind of thing that you would do.
Yeah.
Objection cards immediately become true for the player that they are being played against, and they must be dealt with. Examples of some of the cards are,
Your mouth is full of peanut butter.
you're actually the estate keeper's mom.
You're clearly 3 kids in a trench coat.
Yes, that's a great one. So these objection cards are usually where the story takes a real left or right turn.
Yeah.
And you're forced to really think on your feet about how to respond.
Yeah.
And still convince the estate keeper that you're worthy, most worthy
Yeah.
of receiving that inheritance.
My niece was slid across an objection card. I didn't know what it was. Her friend, here you go. And she looked at it, and then she started speaking with this British accent. And I'm like, where did this come from? She sounded like a Spice Girl or something. I'm like, where did this come from? I didn't even know you could do that. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. So she had been given, you're speaking with an accent card. And from that point on, for the rest of the game, it just sounded like Posh Spice.
Posh Spice. That's hilarious. In round 3, players get to ask one question of one other player at the table. Not everyone at the table has to be asked a question, so players can actually gang up on one player who they think is most likely to win the inheritance, or they can spread the questions around amongst the entire group. In the final round, players get one last backstory card and get one more chance to convince the estate keeper that they deserve to receive the inheritance from the deceased, incorporating their new backstory card into their story and character. So after everyone has had a chance to present their case, the estate keeper must choose one of the players to receive the inheritance. The criteria for this decision is entirely up to the estate keeper, but it should be explained by some in-game reason for the person to win the inheritance. So this part is a little bit like Cards Against Humanity is the one that everybody knows. The who wins or loses is really arbitrary.
Yeah.
It's who made me laugh the most, or who had the story that made all their cards fit together the best.
Yeah.
It's not really, there's no skill involved. Unless, of course, you're a comedian and an improv artist, then maybe there is.
Maybe. That would be a hard game to judge.
It would, yeah. Let's play a game with...
There's just so many opportunities for funny things to happen when you're playing this. Like, it always ends in stitches. Just like you can't breathe. You're laughing so hard.
Yeah, your cheeks hurt at the end of this game almost every time.
It's not necessarily, wit that brought that about, right? And there's plenty of opportunity for somebody to be really, really clever and really, really smart. But sometimes the circumstances just call for make it hilarious.
Yeah, and you're mixing everything together. So time limits for the actual game and the banter between rounds, that's entirely at the discretion of the estate keeper.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a game that can move along quite quickly, and you can play several games in an evening, or, it could be an hour and everyone's having a chance to really,
dig their teeth into it.
And really get into character. Someone has died. It's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone. That improv element is, it's an important factor in this game. So if you're not someone who's comfortable with storytelling, role playing, or you just can't do the improv, thinking on the fly sort of thing, this one might be one you want to take a pass on.
But I would recommend that even if it interests you at all, these cards and the way that they come out and the prompts that they give you are never overwhelming, I find. Like the idea of just being in character for a whole game is kind of intimidating, but the way that the prompts come out and the way that the cards come out is quite manageable. And I find it's it's pretty easy.
Yeah. And if you're someone who likes to do impressions or, has a little bit of drama and back in high school or something like that.
You're going to have a field day at this game.
Exactly. Yeah. This can really be one. And, you have to play with the right group.
Yeah.
You're playing with your family. You might be a little bit more comfortable in that scenario than you are with a group of strangers. The game is very, very silly. Like everything that comes out, and by the end of it, the silly nature of it is, the game's very silly. So one time I had a card that said I had to subtly tell the person on my right that they have some food caught in their teeth. So every time I'm talking, I would dramatically look over at her mouth. I'd run my tongue across my teeth while gesturing to her own teeth, just slightly pointing. I'd point at my own teeth while mumbling something in between sentences like, Apparently, I was so convincing that she actually thought she had something caught in her teeth and kept trying to fix it with her fingernail and then a toothpick. And she's doing this the whole time while I'm trying to get her attention so I can keep pointing at her teeth and say, you got something. She said that afterwards, as the card was revealed, she said that she was getting really paranoid about it. And honestly, this was one of the most fun times we've had playing this game. Like I was just...
That's hilarious.
My cheeks were hurting so much because everyone had a ridiculous story and had one of these moments where the only one person was in on the story and they were adding, an objection or something. It just made us all laugh so much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good game. Very, very good game.
We're going to get back to the show after a brief message. This next ad is for Chris's own company, Geeky Goodies. If you'd like to hear what an ad for your game, product, or website might sound like, drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. When we escape into board games, we're always wearing our Geeky Goodies t-shirts.
They are great conversation starters for gamers and non-gamers.
But did you know that they also sell masks, socks, hoodies, game room posters, mugs, and so much more?
All things board games.
All things geeky.
Visit geekygoodies.com and use coupon code ESCAPE for a 10% discount off your purchase. It seems to me that role-playing is a big part of many of these games that we're featuring.
Yeah.
The idea that you're taking on a character and you're saying things that you wouldn't say in your day-to-day lives. You're playing the role of a person whose life experiences are different than yours.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
The game that we're going to feature next it's
a semi-cooperative social deduction game for 2 players with elements of role-playing, which is quite unique. In fact, I have exactly 2 overly produced semi-cooperative 2-player social deduction games with elements of role-playing in my collection.
What's the other one?
Fog of Love and Inhuman Conditions. Inhuman Conditions is a science fiction bluffing improv social deduction party game for 2 players. Inhuman Conditions was designed by Tony Maranges and Corey O'Brien and was kickstarted and self-published in 2020. Describe in single words only the good things that come into your mind about your mother.
My mother?
Yeah.
Let me tell you about my mother.
In Inhuman Conditions, 2 players face off in this board game equivalent of the Voight-Kampff test from the movie Blade Runner. One player plays the suspect, and the other player is the investigator trying to figure out if their opponent is human or a robot. The suspect player could be human and just have to get through the interview process without being confused for a robot. The suspect could be a peaceful robot, where they'd have to adhere to a specific linguistic rule during the whole interview process and not get labeled a robot. Or the suspect could be a violent robot, trying to accomplish 3 conversational objectives before being allowed to murder the interviewer.
My mother?
These linguistic rules and conversational objectives are the meat of the game, and for me to mention them specifically here could be potential spoilers for listeners, so I'll paraphrase and distort the actual examples. But maybe a peaceful robot can't mention any object that's not in the room. Or perhaps when talking about people, they can't mention anyone's name.
Okay.
A violent robot will have a few objectives to choose from, but they'll have to complete several of them. They might have to mention something specific or respond to a question in a particular way. This makes the investigator's job very difficult because even the human players are improvising, and it's hard to tell improvisation from regular robot behavior. At the start of the game, players are situated opposite each other with the game box between them. This overly produced game flips open with a magnetic lid. The attached lid lays on the table, and the box and the lid are designed to look like a large recording apparatus, like an old reel-to-reel machine or maybe a lie detector test.
Cool.
Inside are what feels like hundreds of these long, old-style punch cards. They have the same proportions as punch cards, and they have the corners shaved off of them. They evoke that old punch card feel. They are organized in modules like imagination, small talk, self-image, grief, or creative problem solving. Each of these modules contain 12 cards that could be either human, violent robot, or patient robot, as well as 7 cards for the investigator to use in their interview. They have prompts on them that will help the investigator start the questioning. There's a pad of paper where the investigators will peel a sheet from and use to take notes throughout the game. These are called identity compliant audits.
Okay.
Everything in this game is given a tremendous theme. The suspect is given a background. This comes from a deck of cards and could be used van dealer, dishonorably discharged from the military, former child star, or professional criminal. From this point forward, the suspect will interact with the interviewer from this perspective of that background. This makes it so the suspect is always lying throughout the game. They're always role-playing, which makes it difficult to find the robots.
Yeah.
Everything about the game is evoking the theme of the game. Like there's an app that comes on and it's just a timer so that it times the interview process. But the language in it is all about, right?
Yeah.
There is this authority. The interviewer is the authority. The interviewee, the suspect, is the suspect. And there is a power balance there. And they establish that right at the beginning. So I was talking about these linguistic challenges or conversational objectives that the robots have to adhere to or have to accomplish.
Right.
If they don't do that, or if they mess up and they break a rule that they've been given that only they know they have, well, then they have to accomplish the penalty. Now, the penalty is a deck of cards. You pull 3 out and you choose one at the beginning of the game. They could be, say a word with at least 5 syllables. Restate a question in your own words. Take your hands off the table. So that would be the penalty. So if at any point the suspect performs the penalty, they're doing so because they've broken a rule previously in the game and they have to fix it in order to win. They have to perform the penalty.
Right. But those cues are so subtle that it is very easy to accidentally do some of them as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking and I take my hands off the table because I'm sort of leaning back to kind of put my mind in a different thought pattern. And then I realize, oh, I've taken my hands off the table.
I've just done the thing.
Exactly.
So at the start of the game, when you set it up and you go through, you get the app ready and you sit the suspect down, you have to take a bunch of information, write it down on these audit forms. You write down their name and you write down their background. And then the interviewer asks the suspect to perform the penalty. You have to do the penalty. You have to use a 5-letter word or you have to use an acronym or whatever it happens to be. And this serves 2 functions. First, it establishes the authority that I'm the one asking the questions here and you're going to answer them.
Right.
But it also clears up any ambiguity about what maybe the penalty might be. But at the same time, you're standing there with your pen and the guy says, chrysanthemum. And you go, okay, check. Okay, again, please. And he's right? Again.
Yeah.
And you've got these 3 boxes. They have to perform the penalty 3 times. You're checking it off on the right. It's so crazy. It just feels like administrative. Like there's this.
It's an interrogation.
It's an interrogation.
Like the first time I played this game, I played it with our mutual friend, AJ. And he's interrogating me, and it is this tense series of questions. And I'm constantly, trying to stay in character and answer the questions as honestly. Like I don't want to, inadvertently cheat, but it's hard to do all that and think at the same time. You really feel like there's this spotlight on you.
Yeah.
And, like I'm sweating and I'm like sitting there, just like Leon going, wait, when can this be over? When can this be over? When can I just shoot the guy? Like, can this be over now? Because it's just tense and stress. And it does a perfect job of recreating that scene, that moment in that movie.
There is some terrific writing on these prompts.
Yeah.
The theme isn't just in the components and the stamps and the forms and the app.
Even the graphic design.
In the graphic design, but in the recognizing intentions module, the text at the beginning of the interview goes like this. In a moment, I'm going to ask you some questions about intentions. These will require you to imagine what people hope to achieve in various situations and reconsider your answers in light of new information. Answer honestly. If you are a human, you have nothing to fear. And one of the prompts might be, a man wants to live a good, honest life. Right now, he is robbing a bank. What is he hoping to accomplish? And I just think that is like, could you imagine being asked that? Right. And then maybe you're the used car salesman. You're going to answer that question according to your background.
Yeah.
But then not reveal too much. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Such a great game.
Yeah. Very, very well thought out. The questions themselves, they don't reveal a ton of information. It's how you answer them that reveals that information. And they're just a talking point, really.
They're just a talking point. You're just telling stories.
Yeah. Made up stories on the spot.
Yeah. Which can be hard, but it's fun.
It's definitely a difficult game. And like I said, I felt the sweat. Like it was tense.
Yeah.
It's a good game though.
Sometimes you want a sprawling narrative with interesting characters, epic adventure, unpredictable plot twists, but you don't want to do all the hard work of coming up with that stuff yourself.
Right.
Like dungeon mastering an epic campaign. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That is like...
For the person who's the dungeon master, that takes a lot of preparation.
It's weeks of prep.
Particularly if they're writing their own story. Yeah.
And even someone who's died or Inhuman Conditions, that improvisation on the spot can be quite exhausting.
It's a lot of work too.
Yeah, it can be a lot of work.
Yeah, and intense. It takes a while to get into that headspace. And after one of those games, you just feel tired afterwards.
Yeah, no, that's very true. You're not going to play 2 rounds of any of those in a row.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's nice to have a box that just has everything inside. All of the story, all of the characters, everything you need. No prep.
Yeah.
No imagination needed. Just open it up. The Adventurers comes to mind. Either the Adventurers Temple of Chalk or the Pyramid of Horus have that sort of,
characters
story that evokes no matter what's going to happen, there's going to be a cool story that happens.
Yeah.
Above and Below is a great one, or Near and Far is at least the latest, where there's actually a book with text inside and stories that evolve.
Right. And Eldritch Horror or even Arkham Horror, I think, do a good job of that in terms of this sort of epic storyline, and everyone has their own mission and their own story that there is evolving as it gets on told.
Yeah, no, it's all in that flavor text, that rich flavor text.
Yeah. But I think the best example of this kind of thing is actually Tales of Arabian Nights. Tales of Arabian Nights is an adventure, storytelling, and role-playing game for 1 to 6 players, ages 12 and up. The time on the box says it can be played in about 2 hours, but my experience is that it takes much longer than that. The game was designed by Anthony J. Galella, Eric Goldberg, Kevin Maroney, and Zev Schlesinger, and was published in 2009 by Z-Man Games. The game is inspired by 1001 Nights, a collection of unrelated short stories originating from Middle Eastern folktales by various authors, translators, and scholars. The completely unrelated stories take place in a world full of magic, mythical creatures, and where fantastical things happen. They are all tied together using the fictional story of a Persian king who was betrayed by his first wife and vowed to never trust women, and then decides to marry a new woman every day and killing her the next morning before she could betray him. The Stories of 1001 Nights is narrated by his wife, Scheherazade, who tells him a new awe-inspiring story every night, but always stops on a cliffhanger so that the monarch will delay ordering her death so he can hear the end of the story. With that in mind, in Tales of Arabian Nights, you are the hero or heroine in a story full of adventure and wonder, just like those told by Scheherazade to her spellbound sultan. You will travel the land seeking your destiny and fortune. Your story will unfold in the style of one of those choose-your-own-adventure books, where a different event or scenario will be read out to you, and you'll be presented with a few different options on how you can react. Each one you choose can lead in a different direction where you will receive riches or be punished for your greed. Along the way, you will encounter imprisoned princesses, humble beggars, powerful mythical creatures, and marvel at fabled locations and events from ancient lore. At the beginning of the game, you will have a quest to accomplish and a few different skills to help you along the way. Some examples of the quests are the Seek Knowledge card. This has players traveling the world visiting different cities trying to accomplish different encounters. Or the Seek Love card has players trying to find the love of their life and get married. On your turn, players move a number of spaces on the board. That is a basic map of the world. How far you can move on your turn is determined by your wealth, and at the end of your movement, you will draw the top card from the encounter deck and resolve it. During an encounter, the other players in the game take turns reading the Book of Tales and controlling the reaction matrix. These are the main components in Tales of Arabian Nights. The Book of Tales contains the encounters that you can come across in the game and provide the meat of the story that you are part of. Your player board will provide you with a list of possible reactions that you can choose from based on the options available in this encounter. Examples of some encounters are:
in a strange temple, a fabulous treasure is guarded by hundreds of priests. You yearn to own this treasure and teach the infidels a lesson. You may attempt the robbery yourself or seek help.
The road ahead appears to be writhing and moving. To your horror, you realize it is covered with a mass of black snakes. They move with a purpose. In fact, they seem to be feeding. You may turn back the way you came or try to discover upon what they feed.
Having wandered lost in the mountains for days, you are grateful to find a fabulous palace. The owner of the palace is a kindly old man who welcomes you and listens intently to your tale. He offers to assist you in one condition. While you are his guest, you must not enter the 100th room. Do you accept his bargain? Yes or no?
When you've chosen how you want to react to the encounter, the player with the reaction matrix uses a series of charts to determine what part of the story in the Book of Tales to read next. There is a long list of possible reactions to the different circumstances that can come in the game. The list of possible reactions is tailored to the particulars in the encounter and include things like grovel, attack, avoid, sneak, examine, use, question, bargain, hire, and honor. Generally speaking, most of the good options like avoid, aid, or pray will provide your character with more helpful or perhaps less harsh results than options like attack, abduct, rob, or trick. But that's not true in all cases. Sometimes bad things can happen to good people.
Yeah.
That's all there really is to this game. Each section that is read to you will further develop your story and determine what happens to you. The skills that your character chooses at the start of the game, skills like acting in disguise, weapon use, wilderness lore, seamanship, courtly graces, or seduction, may help with certain encounter cards, but it always comes down to making a choice. Sometimes in the game, you will be given status cards that you must obey. These cards will affect what options you have in the game. They are both positive and negative status cards, but mostly negative. They can last a very long time, or you can look for encounters that will remove them for you. Some examples of status cards are:
the Beast Form card reads, "You have been turned into an ape by great magic and cannot gain or use the seduction or appearance skills while in beast form. If you give wealth to another player in your space who has magic, you lose the beast form status."
The Insane card reads, "You have been driven mad by visions too terrible for mortal men to behold. Another player will pick your reaction in an encounter. You can lose this status if you gain a skill from an encounter." And sometimes you will gain a treasure card. Treasure cards will help you in the game.
The Flying Carpet card will let you move anywhere on the board.
The Thunderbolt sword provides you with a mastery of the weapon skill.
The Magic Lamp card will let a player choose a skill, increase their wealth, or enter a place of power.
Once you've collected enough destiny points to meet your secret quest, you must quickly return to Baghdad in order to win the game. If my description of how the game sounds very random, that's because the game is very random, very much so.
Yeah, it is.
The game is funny and silly, and I suggest you play with the right group and that you approach Tales of Arabian Nights with the right mindset.
Right. Not a lot of strategy going on.
It's not a ton of strategy.
And if things go way you don't want them to go, that's just the way it is. You have to roll with those punches.
Exactly. It's an experience game. It is not a strategic game.
Yeah.
I feel like complaining about the randomness of Tales of Arabian Nights it's a very common refrain online.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like saying that there's a lot of shades of the color blue. Both comments are truthful and they're understatements in a lot of ways, but they provide no real value or even any judgment on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, you might say, oh, that game's so random, and you think that random games are horrible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody who plays a game with random elements thinks that way.
Yeah.
And if you've ever played the classic games like Monopoly, obviously that's one of the complaints is the random element. But if you've ever read Choose Your Own Adventure books, they have a random element to them as well. And I often worry sometimes that those of us who are deeply engaged in a hobby, sometimes we forget that a game is supposed to be about having fun with your friends. And it's supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to offer us opportunities to laugh with our friends. And that's what this game provides. It's not, again, it is not a strategic game. It is a random game that tells a very interesting, magic-filled story.
Yeah.
Some people online argue that Tales of Arabian Nights isn't a game at all, and more of an activity.
Okay.
And generally, I reject this topic as a discussion because I just feel like it's a way to talk about games and make other people feel inferior for liking certain games.
Yeah.
But I completely think that distinction works in this case. Tales of Arabian Nights is an experience much more so than it is a game at all. You have little to no control over what happens to your character, but still everything you decide has rewards or consequences. It's not a game about making strategic decisions or unraveling a puzzle. There are points in the game, but it's not a game about collecting points or even winning or losing. It's a game about creating an interesting and fun story. One of the first times we played it, I think it was a 7-hour game.
Wow.
Like it was a really long game.
Yeah.
I remember less of what my character went through and more about what my wife's character went through.
Okay.
And I think that's probably true of everybody who was playing around the table. She married a man who was a brute. He would beat her. He died, and she was buried in his grave while alive.
No.
And had to get out of that scenario or something. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong with this character. And, part of that is their own decisions. Like I think if you choose the sort of the altruistic kind of choices, you're a little bit more likely to have something good happen. But that's not the case in this game. It's very much like life. Each scenario that you encounter will be different, and there isn't a clear path to victory or to points. There's no guarantee that whatever you choose won't end badly for you. As an example, if you decide to help the beggar on the side of the street, he could just as easily end up being a wealthy person in disguise, looking to find a noble person to richly reward for providing a helping hand, as he could be ready to attack you and take away everything that you've worked hard to get so far in the game.
That's right. Yeah.
So yes, it is random, and I feel like life is random. And if you think about it, why do some people make all the right decisions and still struggle while others seem to glide through life, getting everything they want without ever really having to work for it? Thematically, the game is a lot like those original short vignettes, those short stories that they're based on, because they had no connection to themselves. They were just a way for the main character to stay alive another night.
Right.
And the stories were all written by different people with different, sensibilities and put together in this collection. There's no real relationship between the different encounters.
Right.
Your goal with Tales of Arabian Nights should be to choose the options that sound the most intriguing to you. Or maybe you choose the ones that fit your character the best. You may want to make your decisions based on which options sound like it will create the best story, rather than what is good or bad or what will help you win. The game comes with a very, very large book.
Huge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reading in the game.
Spiral bound.
Like textbook. And in that book is numbers. So depending on what you choose, if you meet the beggar and you decide to help him and give him some of your money, it'll say turn to story 376. And then the person on your left or right is going to read the section 376 and tell you that the beggar is either happy with what you did or not happy with what you did. And then you'll have to live with those consequences.
Yeah.
That's really the whole point of the game. It's you're reading a story. I don't think Tales of Arabian Nights is for everybody, but for me, it's a guilty pleasure game. This is one that I don't pull out often, but I love to play. I love the story that it comes out. It's not one that I would call, oh, that's a good game, because there isn't really much of a game there. And it's not one that I would, play with someone who's never experienced it before without at least explaining that it's very random and that these things can just happen in the game. But the story and the experience that it provides, it has given me a permanent home in my collection, and still one of the more fun experiences that I have having played it with our friends.
Nice. It's got a beautiful map.
Yeah, the map's pretty good, yeah.
It's one of my favorite maps in all of board games.
Really?
Yeah. I own this game and I've played it, but I've not completed a game in its entirety by the rules.
Right.
A certain number, isn't it 20 total Destiny points?
Yeah, it's either 15 or 20 Destiny points.
Total.
And then in the rulebook, it says, for a shorter game, you can play to less points.
That's right, yeah.
So that's always an option. And it's not one that we've done. I think we might have done it once, but usually we just kind of play until everyone's exhausted. In fact, the first time we played it was so long, we left it out overnight and finished it the next morning.
Yeah.
It can be a really, really long game.
It is one of those, yeah.
And I get it. For some people, it can be really tedious.
Sure.
And
I mean, if it's going to be random and long, that can be quite.
Yeah. But for me, that story that comes out of it is just so rich and exciting. And like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. I like it. Matt, should we tell people how we met for the first time?
It was during a event at Board Game Bliss called Make New Friends Day.
Yeah.
Hosted by AJ Brandon.
And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, we certainly did.
I met you for the first time. You met me for the first time. And we were fast friends ever since, really.
Yeah. And we had set up that game that you can only play at these events.
Right.
because you need 8 players for it to really work.
I mean, you could do 6.
Use 6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
But it really shines at 8.
Yeah. And we played basically with strangers. I knew a couple of the people.
Yeah.
I didn't know you and your friend Danny, and we invited some more strangers over to the table who we'd never met. And we had enough for 8, and we played.
Yeah. I cleaned your clock.
You did, yes. I have to say, the game itself still stands as one of the fondest memories I have of playing a game ever.
Yeah. I had played that game a couple of times since then, trying to recreate that magic.
Right.
And it has failed several times. If everybody isn't on the same page, it can be quite difficult to have fun.
Yeah.
But that first play was something I'll never forget.
Captain Sonar.
Captain Sonar is a team-based, real-time, hidden movement sub-hunting game.
It can be played with 2 to 8 players in about an hour or less and is recommended for ages 14 and up.
Captain Sonar was designed by Roberto Fraga and Johan Lemonnier and was published by Madigo in 2016. Captain Sonar is very much like a real-time simulation of the classic board game Battleship, where players are divided into teams and take control of a state-of-the-art submarine. The object of the game is to locate the enemy's sub and destroy it.
Each team has to work together within their own individual roles to destroy the enemy ship. Every role is important in this confrontation. The captain is nothing without his crew. The first mate, the radio operator, and the engineer. Communication and a well-organized crew are key to winning this game and avoiding destruction at the hands of your enemy.
Each player has a dry erase player sheet in front of them. The captain has a map of the whole board, as does the radio operator, whereas the first mate and engineer have different systems on the ship. Whenever the captain moves the ship in a new direction, the engineer must break a new system. There's different systems in different boxes. For example, when the captain moves west, the engineer can break the sonar. The engineer has to be careful in damaging these systems in a particular order, otherwise the whole ship will have to resurface for repairs. The systems can be managed if they're broken in the right way. So that's what the engineer is doing, and trying to keep everything functioning for when the captain needs to use it. The first mate is doing something similar. For every direction the captain goes, he is powering up different systems on the ship. The boat is equipped with mines or drones or sonar and torpedoes, which can all be activated at a moment's notice once they're powered up. The entire game is happening in real time. So each captain is firing off different directions at the same time. The captain will say, going north. And when that happens, the engineer and the first mate both have things to do on their sheet.
Head north.
And then the boat heads north. The captain then draws on their sheet their boat going north on the map. So their coordinates on the sheet are written on the dry erase marker. While this is all happening, the radio operator on the other team is listening to these commands. There is a privacy screen set up between each team, so you can't see what they're drawing.
Right.
But you can hear what they're saying, and that's part of the mechanism. You need to hear what the captain of the other team is saying. The radio operator is then drawing down the directions on their sheet. If the other captain went north, northeast, well, then they've got a long line that goes up and then it goes over to the east.
Right.
And this is on a separate dry erase page that they can slide around the map to figure out where it would fit, because there's islands and there's different things at different locations of the map to make certain movement impossible.
Right. So if I think they're in this location and they've gone ahead 3 and then east 2, and I can see that by doing that, they'd have to literally cross over an island, which isn't allowed.
Yeah.
Then I know that where I was assuming they started is in the wrong position. But because it's this clear, transparent screen, I can move it around the board and go, okay, so if they didn't start in that square, they can start in this square, which means instead of being there, they're now over here and we're really close to them.
Yeah. It makes the radio operator's job very powerful and very important.
Yes.
And they're in charge of trying to figure out where the other ship is by doing that, by just listening to their directions, writing it down, and then just sliding that sheet around and trying to find out. And the radio operator sits beside the captain. The captain's sort of in the middle, next to the first mate. Engineer's at the far end. And the captain has to figure out, okay, engineer, which direction do I need to go so that you can get these repairs done? Oh, you want me to go north? Okay, I'm going to go north. Okay, I'm going north, everybody. And they announce going north. The other radio operator is writing all that down. They went north, trying to find the ship. Once you've powered up certain systems, you can activate certain modules, and one of them is Sonar. If you've powered up the Sonar and you go to activate it, you stop the game. Okay, everybody stops. We're activating Sonar.
Yeah.
That means their opponent must give them 2 pieces of information, one of them true and one of them false. This information could be which of the 9 sectors are they in, or which column they're in, or which row they're in. They give 2 pieces of information and only one of them is true. And so the radio operator is going to write down, okay, when they were at this location, they gave these 2 pieces of information at this time. And then the game starts up again. North, east, south, north, west, all happening in real time until we've charged up another ability and maybe we can launch a torpedo. The captain can launch a torpedo into any space up to 4 spaces away from their ship. And so again, play stops, everybody stops. The captain of launching the torpedo says, we are launching a torpedo at, and they announce some coordinates. E5.
Very much like Battleship.
Very much like Battleship. Direct hits will do a lot of damage. Indirect hits will do less. And once the sub has sustained 4 points of damage, the game is over.
Each station has its own sort of mini game that they're playing.
The first mate's little mini game is all about powering up those different systems, the torpedoes, the drones, the sonars.
Right.
They have 9 different systems that they can use.
Right.
The engineer is breaking systems, but if they break them in the right order, then they can be repaired without surfacing. So the captain and the engineer have to be in constant communication to find out which directions are going to work.
Right. I was always confused about what thematically that was. The engineer's breaking systems. I always thought of it, he's just using systems.
Yeah.
And they could overheat and therefore break. But I think they actually use the word break in the rule book, which always struck me as odd.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to use them until you've cleaned out that damage too, though. But that's what it is. You've pushed the engine and now it's like it's overheated and you need to
I cannot do it, Captain. I've got to go. Yeah, exactly.
But it's not an easy job to be the engineer. It's a lot of work, very little reward, right?
Yes,
the first mate's like, guess what? We get to launch a torpedo now, everybody. And I was like, yeah, way to go, first mate.
Yeah.
How about an engineer? And like, no, you can't launch the torpedoes. My torpedo bay is not working. Oh, come on, engineer. What the heck?
Exactly. And the radio operator, he always has the glory, right? He's like, I found them. I know exactly where they are.
Yes.
Now just get us torpedoes so we can fire at them.
It is a high pressure position to be in that.
It is.
Radio operator. And I've had games where the captain does this. Oh, you guys want to go north? Okay. Let's go north. Okay. We're going. And I'm like, what? Are you going north? What was the last direction you just made? And you're not playing in the spirit of the game.
In the spirit of the game, yeah.
That's borderline cheating when you're not playing by that.
Yeah, I would agree. But that is part of the game. If the captain says ahead north, ahead north, ahead north, and you only heard 2 of them for whatever reason, because your captain was talking to you or the engineer was yelling something from the back, you're going to have the wrong information about where the enemy ship is and the consequences of that.
Yes. And if there's any one of those directions is wrong.
Yeah.
What do you mean they went east one time? What?
Yeah, I didn't have that written down.
No, So they're over here. They went a whole other, right? And there's an island they skirted around, and now they're, Yeah, it's really important you get all that info down.
And because you're guessing where they are all the time, that can be quite different from where it actually happens.
Yeah.
The game is a lot like game version of The Hunt for Red October or
That's right.
or the movie Das Boot.
Das Boot.
Yeah, like you've got this sort of real-time puzzle. It's a race. It's very fast-paced.
Yeah.
But it has this real reliance on teamwork.
Yeah.
Making sure that everyone is communicating what they need and what they have to do and what can be done.
Yeah.
And of course, there's that confrontation element that you're being hunted and doing the hunting at the same time. So it's really tense.
Yeah, it's you're being hunted and you're hunting at the same time. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's all these different things you can do. You can run silent.
Yeah.
Now, you can just put the boat like up to 3 spaces away and not tell anybody where you went. That's really handy. When you launch a drone, you can just point to one of the sectors and say, "Are you in sector 5?"
Right.
And it's a yes or no, right? Just like a yes or no. Oh, there they are. And you can just like narrow things down very quickly.
Yeah. And each sector has, I think it's 9 squares, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's like a tic-tac-toe grid of 9.
There's 9 squares on the map.
And there's some various islands and things dispersed out. There's a couple of different maps you can get, right? You can get the map with lots of islands or the map with a little bit of islands.
We've mentioned before, the game plays up to 8 players. It's at best with 8.
Yeah.
You could play it with 6 or 7, but it's one that you want to play with the full complement of 8 players. It makes it a great convention game.
Yeah.
I don't own Captain Sonar as much as I loved it and it created that most memorable gaming experience. I own the 2 to 4 player version, which is just simply called Sonar.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's the same game. It's pared down.
Yeah.
I think you're taking away the engineer and the first mate roles, and the captain and the radio operator kind of take on some of their role. But basically, it's a simplified version. Both games have an option to do turn-based and real-time. And the turn-based game, I guess a good first game for somebody who has never played anything like this.
Yeah.
Because the real time can go really fast. And if everyone at the table has played the game before, it can be really intimidating and confusing for that new player.
Yeah.
The rules are really simple. Like, it takes a bit to explain because both sides have 4 different sets of rules and they all have to work together.
Yeah.
But you can explain the engineer to both players who are going to be the engineer.
The radio operator doesn't need to know how the engineer plays.
Yeah, they don't need to know any of that. They have their own mini games that they're doing.
Exactly.
And, it makes it a good party game. It's very thematic.
Yeah.
Stressful.
Yeah.
But fun.
Agreed.
It does what I think is a really fantastic job of simulating that tension that you see in those sub movies, right? That sub battle. And I think, to a certain extent, it also does a good job of simulating that feeling of, I don't want to let the person down to the left of me or to the right of me.
Yeah.
I don't want to let the other players down. And when you do make a mistake, because I've done that many times in this game, you're devastated.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. Now we're all going to die. Yeah.
Everybody's got an opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the captain has a lot on their shoulders. They've got to organize everything. But the first mate might not have charged the right thing, right? What? We don't need drones right now. We need a torpedo, right? Like, what? Oh, sorry. And the engineer could have systems not working when they need to be working. And the radio operator could easily lose the sub.
Easily. Very easy. Yeah. And it happens so fast.
Because it's so hard to be that role sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and it's not that pressure we're used to from your opponent. Oh, he's going to get that card. He's going to get the bonus. He's going to get the thing. It's the pressure from your own teammates. I'm going to let these guys down. We're not going to be able to get they're going to ask me for something. I'm not going to be able to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's very few board games I feel that really do that.
Yeah.
Like, that it's a cooperative game and, I made a decision that was wrong and we lost because of it. Oh, well. But in this game, it's like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Like literally, I can point to that decision that I made or that time I didn't hear something from the other side of the table or I didn't get the captain's attention to tell him which way we need to go so the engine can work or whatever. You really feel that, you've let down your teammates.
Yeah.
It's a fun one to play a couple of times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because
you switch it around. I'll be the radio operator one time and then switch over to first mate or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Give everybody a chance to try out the different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Captain, I find to be too intimidating. I'm happy to be any other role but captain.
I agree. I don't know if I've actually been the captain in anything, except for maybe the 2-player version.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many times have you played the 2-player version?
4 or 5 at least.
And have you always done the real time?
Yeah. Oh, no. First time we played it, it was the first time that I played with Sherry.
Yeah.
We did the turn-based just to kind of get the sense of it.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, and now we're going to play it the way it really is meant to be played.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to say that all the roles in this game are important to win.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has to be communicating with, particularly with the captain. But some roles on the sub are more fun to play than others.
Sure.
I think the radio operator is a lot more fun than the engineer, for example.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's a good idea to play it a couple times in a row and flip positions and say, do you want to try this? And then you realize, oh, this is really hard. No wonder Chris made a mistake and bungled everything for us.
This ain't easy.
No. I feel like Captain Sonar could easily be used as that team building exercise at a corporate retreat. Like,
totally.
I don't understand why it isn't, if it isn't already. I mean, I guess because, there's a war nature to it. But it is easily one of the best games, if not the best game, for that sort of team mentality. We all have to work together and talk together and communicate.
Yeah.
Because you can be really in tune with your team and listening and talking really well. And you realize about, a third of the way through that we're really slow. Like the other teams, ahead 1, ahead 2, ahead 1, ahead 1, ahead 1, east 1, head 1. And we're like, okay, well, I think they're over here. They should be over here. Well, but maybe they're over there. Ahead 1. Okay, we're going 1. All right. And we've moved 1 square and the other teams moved 6.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, we are going to get hammered when they catch up to us and figure out where we are. But then there's opportunities for mistakes too, right?
Yeah. No, I'll never forget that first game.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Like we said, we met for the first time. We played with strangers. A couple of them I don't think I've ever seen ever again.
Yeah.
But it was just such a memorable experience. Like I think everyone we played with, because we played with 2 friends who had played before, Les and Justin, and they had, experienced the game before and they kind of taught it and they were our captains.
They were our captains. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Justin was your captain. And and
then you and I were the radio operators.
Yeah. Sitting across from each other,
That's right.
listening on the conversation. It was, like I said, it was one of the best experiences of a game con. It wasn't a con. It was a board game store that had some tables.
A meetup. Yeah.
A meetup. It was one of the best of that. It was one of the best cooperative game experiences. It was one of the best game experiences where I'm playing with literally, over half of the people that I've never met before.
Yeah. Complete strangers.
And I'm pretty sure everybody at the table went away thinking, wow, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
Because we all talked about it afterwards.
Yeah, they had a tournament.
Oh, that's right.
A Captain Sonar tournament a few months later, just based on the success of those plays. And that's when it didn't land right. There were some players that were mumbly and stuff, and things fell apart really quickly for me because it just wasn't like it was that first game.
Yeah.
I've had subsequent plays of it that have been as fun and really good.
Yeah.
But that very next play was a stark contrast because it's all about the right group of people, right? You need a good group.
Yeah. And it does a good job of creating that unique experience that we've been talking about throughout the whole show. Like you come away feeling like I've been in a sweaty metal tube with my teammates and I let them down and now we're at the bottom of the ocean. Because that's what happened when we played.
Glug, glug,
glug. Awesome. Excellent.
Have you played any of the games that we've talked about today? What's some of the games that have provided you with a unique experience? Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Escape into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Escape into Board Games. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps more people discover Escape into Board Games. You can get an Escape into Board Games t-shirt at geekygoodies.com/escapeinteboardgames. Or you can help us fuel the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/escapeintobgs.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Sound editing by Matt McKenzie. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut and Daniel Carlton. See you at the next escape.